All right, everybody, welcome back to the Inner Whirled podcast, the best thing on the internet for people that are serious about researching symbolism, mythology, language, philology, all that good, juicy stuff. I'm ready to have some fun. We got Dylan here looking like a pirate. And this episode, he wanted to call Beggars on Horseback, which I'll let him explain that. But after going through his show notes, I can tell that he's got mediator symbolism on the mind, talking about Eta, the priests as the fathers, Hades, all that. And we're going to be diving into the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, the stars as the wilderness, the garb of the priests. And that's some of the stuff Dylan's got on deck. For me, I'm going to get into the math of the Pentateuch genealogy lists and the world age doctrine and how all that pertains to the ruling class. So we have quite a feast for your knowledge on deck here today. It's going to be a good time. Dylan, how you doing, buddy?
Everything's great. I've been getting some interesting life lessons and life tests that I think stuff that's happening that kind of is just out of the ordinary, that I rise to the occasion. And, you know, when you rise to the occasion, it kind of reminds you what you have in you, you know, and how some people flee and panic, and then some people go straight towards the issues and solve it. And it's just been really exciting lately, and, you know, kind of reminding me what I've got going on inside me that, you know, that sets me apart. Very, very, very good life going on right now.
Good, man. I tell people that when I'm working with clients that are having some kind of particular challenge that they feel is insurmountable, my catchphrase is the obstacle is the course. You know, like you don't run around the hurdle or away from the hurdle. The hurdle tells you where to go. Go straight at that bad boy. Leap over that thing. Get stronger if you can't jump over it. That's the thing.
Exactly. And then you can also see how people react. And you can see how, like, for example, the other day I probably I put out a fire. While everyone else was panicking and running, I went and grabbed the fire extinguisher, didn't panic. And you got to like pull the grenade. It's like there's a pin on them. So you got to like pull the grenade so you can press it. And I just went, put it out. And it's like, I just saved you millions of dollars. There's like 30 people here whose livelihoods I just saved for the next year. Not one person even said thank you. They were all like, run, exit. No, and I'm in a pretty masculine, conservative place, and everybody still ran away like little children. And I just realized in life, like, it's tying into this beggars on horseback. And the majority of people, the reason the elites and the wealthy and the powerful never give you opportunities is because when they do, you constantly do bad things with it, and you can't handle power and wealth. And that's why we called this, because there's an expression in the old world a couple hundred years ago when it was pertinent, that if you set a beggar on horseback, they'll ride to the devil. And you see that with fame, fortune, all these things. When people get a lot of influence, they do bad things with it. And because now that all these doors are open and you can get whatever you want times 10 or whatever, now people just go to their vices, or they take advantage of others because they never could have got that when they didn't have those resources. So you just you learn about the world so much, and it just constantly reinforces why The Witcher resonates with me so much, because here's a guy that people pay to take out monsters and protect them and keep them safe. And he does the job, but they almost look at him like he's a monster for it. And he's not welcomed into society. And he has to kind of keep this fringe, like in between, you know, not really siding with anybody. And I just think that there's a lot of that. There's a lot of benefit to living that kind of lifestyle. So you never get caught up with the masses, because they're always going in the wrong direction anyway. And for those who've never heard this expression, a beggar on horseback is a person unaccustomed to wealth or luxury who will easily be corrupted by it. And the word person, as we talked in the last episode, 2 episodes, I think, is interchangeable with parson, a beneficed member of the clergy. And a benefice, a permanent church appointment, is typically that of a rector or a vicar, for which property and income are provided in respect of pastoral duties. And benefice, if you were to pronounce it like Italians, it'd kind of be like benefice. And so that brings a another layer to the meaning of Pope Boniface, which, for those who've read Spirit World Book 2, The Blackest of All Magic, that won't be lost on you because the name means do-gooder or one who does good.
Yeah, and it has that idea of the beneficiary in trust law too, which I'm pretty sure that's the position of the Pope to the whole world system. And we're actually going to talk about that. We're going to talk about where this idea of the pontifical emperor is derived from, or at least what gives that the perceived authority throughout history. I have some good stuff about that. What I liked about last time, I think we should continue the pattern is you have your Substack article and it goes down to the line where the paywall starts. And maybe we can just go through what's in the free section of that.
That's what I do.
Yeah. So there's lots of free content on Dylan's Substack. You don't even have to you don't even have to toss a coin to your Witcher, although I recommend it because the best stuff is after the paywall, of course. And we put a lot of time and energy and years of expertise to filter out the information that we sift through to bring everybody the nuggets that will make sense of the symbolism, to make sense of the language. So yeah, let's go through that. Let's get into that till we get to the paywall. Then we'll cut over to our members only section, and there's lots to talk about. So we better get going.
Perfect. So I started off with a citation from Taylor, and he wrote, "What does not the theophagist, which means God flesh eater, owe to his spiritual pastor and master, who has dished him up such a bit of heavenly lamb with such hellish sauce to it?" And that is so deep because you have the God flesh eater, which are the people who eat the flesh and the blood of Christ, right? And then you have that heavenly bit of lamb, right? The Lamb of God. And this goes all the way to India where they're burning the lamb. But before Christianity, the Latins called it the Agnus Dei, the Lamb of God. And that is how Jesus was depicted all the way up to 680 AD, where they actually passed a writ, and we've talked about that and cited it, read it, I think, in Latin, where they had to actually pass an edict to stop depicting Jesus as a lamb and start depicting him as a man, all the way up to the end of the 7th and beginning of the 8th century AD. Now, this is important because when you look at that lamb, we've covered that with the lam and lav and all these relationships it has with these sun gods. Well, you have temples to Mithra, and that's before Aries. It's the sun in the sign of the bull. And Mithra is wrestling the bull with the sun, which signifies mediator, or one who binds a covenant, contract, or oath. And Wiki, just to quote them, describes Mithra as an ancient Iranian deity of covenants, light, oath, justice, the sun, contracts, and friendship. In addition to being the divinity of contracts, Mithra is also a judicial figure, an all-seeing protector of truth, and the guardian of cattle, the harvest, and the waters. And which planet is the only planet that in Ptolemy's dignities is dignified in water signs? All of them?
Oh, you're asking me which planet is dignified in water signs?
Do you remember?
No, I don't know that one.
Mars.
Okay, that would have been my guess because
the sea.
I got mixed up by modern astrologers always saying that Mars is in detriment in water signs.
Yeah, because they don't know anything about the ancient system. And that's the problem, is there's a massive disconnect. And this is what I'm showing people. And that comes from Phoenicia. We've showed that Mars is an inscription on an alleged Etruscan pottery dated to the 4th century BC. I don't know if it's authentic. I'm inclined to think it might not be, but because it reads from left to right as opposed to right to left. That being said, you see that going all the way back to the Phoenician word maud, meaning great, which the Irish still use, Finnish maud. and you have the Welsh and Scottish, it more conforms to the Latin mare, which means sea. But you can see how that ties into Pontus, which is the Greek word for sea, but it's more of a poetical way of describing the sea. And there's this idea of great and the magnificent expanse, which is the sea. And these archetypes were the sun prior to being reascribed to planets after they're no longer in use. And that's important because you see all of this in Mithraism. While many moderns have suggested that the judge emulates Saturn in his black robes, Father Time, Kronos, etc., I explain and demonstrate the earlier symbolism of this system harkens back to the sun. You want to say and jump in?
Well, then that's who Saturn and Kronos is in the ancient system before it gets assigned to the seventh planet. And I've got some good stuff on that, evidence to that. That Saturn is the great father. Of course, that's kind of still there in the Greek mythological imperialism, but it bears repeating over and over again that the Disneyfied version of mythology that we have now with these big pantheons and all their humanized antics is a pretty far stretch from how the original system was conceived and what it was meant to be. And that I hold personally that the meaning of this was the androgyne great father mother that was the earth and the sun together, married together as one thing.
And it is worth, anytime you feel like repeating yourself, just remember that every time we do one of these, I have like anywhere from 50 to 100 new subscribers. So it's worth, some of them haven't heard this. And the only way they're going to be motivated to go back to the beginning and go through spirit world and go through the real universal empire is for us to demonstrate this stuff. And we talk about Kronos. You've done episodes on Kronos being the sun and representing time because that's what time is reckoned by. Well, in Hebrews 8:6, Moses is also described as a mediator, with the Greek word also having the root mes, or mu eta sigma, which also signifies the midday sun or noon. And I've included screenshots that we've gone over in other episodes in the show notes. But for those who can't read Greek, the inscription on the coin that we showed read mes with a gammadion, which people nowadays call a swastika, which signifies the midday sun, followed by that gammadion. And it's right in the middle of a solar cross dividing the year, which is Janus, Jova, Hove, Jove, Jupiter, etc. The island, and that's what people call Job because they don't know how to read the Greek and pronounce it the right way. And the island was called, where the city was called Mesembria, which is a city of the midday sun. And the Greek version of that it looks like Mesembrianon. And we write it as Embria, and it's philologically Umbria, which is the oldest civilization in Italy, according to Pliny the Elder. But it might be Umbria with the V sound. That's how the Italians say Umbria, but it might have been related to that V. That's something worth considering.
Do you think that the symbolism you're talking about is also why the Middle East Babylonian empires were called Mesopotamia? Because that's midday, or mediator, and then Pot, which is a name for Buddha. Swap the B, swap the T, and Pot, you got Bud. And then Amia, the land of the mediator Buddha, Mesopotamia.
Bam. That was an inner world exclusive. So definitely keep those notes because what's going to be good about this in this first portion is we're going to show you why it matters culturally, right? Because I'm not about just talking about this shit, philosophizing and all that stuff. What we're going to show you is indisputable across the world at a time where it shouldn't be according to the chronological history we've been given. And now that you see that all these Moses, Moshe, all that stuff are sun archetypes, mediator, in Kronos, and then Kronos is always depicted with like the horns and stuff. Well, you see Moses depicted with the horns. So there's so many ways to link them. I mean, it all ties back to allegedly India and the Orient, because their concept of horn was synonymous with radiance. And so, but it might be coming from Hornu, like the C, CH, H are interchangeable. So you have cornucopia, cornu, horn, that in the European world, but then it has Keren. It looks like KR, or well, technically QRN, but you could say KRN, which is the root of Chronos and all that stuff. And in Hebrew, even that word means horn and both radiant. And that's why anything that deals with luminaries, usually in mythology, has horns. And it's, people think that it's an artist misinterpreting stuff. You have Dunning-Kruger effect. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. If you think these initiated people who do this kind of work are misinterpreting stuff at the highest levels, you probably have Dunning-Kruger. Anyhow.
Well, here's Moses with the horns, depicted this way in all ancient artwork and sculptures. And the seed myth, or the corn myth, is at the root of that, one of the ubiquitous elements of the monomyth across the entire world in the ancient civilizations. And Kronos, again, is KRN or CRN. It's the corn. You know, it's both the bounty of the cornucopia, that the sun impregnates the earth and we receive all of that abundance. It's also, like you said, the rays of the sun, the radiance, and the mythos of the seed, Adonis, you know, the underworld journey that the Osiris figure or the savior figure goes on, planted under the ground or buried under the ground or put into the tomb or the cave of Brahm, and then regenerating, coming back up, just like the sun rises again every day. And just like the return of springtime after winter, this is part of the fractality that this mythology is trying to illustrate to us.
Yep. And for those who want to just look up that word, who aren't familiar with Hebrew, it would be spelled Kaf, Resh, Nun, Sofi. Type those letters in if you don't know how to write them, or search for them with a Hebrew keyboard. But I think now, unless you want to cover some of your notes, we'll get into Christ's eternal priesthood, the epistle to the Hebrews.
Now let's just roll through it till we get to your paywall break.
Awesome.
Quite a bit there for our free audience.
Yeah. And why don't you read that? Would you be comfortable reading that quotation?
1 second. Just move the screen.
Just so it's not like me monologuing.
Christ's eternal priesthood, epistle to the Hebrews 8. And the sum concerning the things spoken of is, we have such a chief priest, who did sit down at the right hand of the throne of the greatness in the heavens, of the holy places a servant, and of the true tabernacle, which the Lord did set up, and not man. For every chief priest to offer both gifts and sacrifices is appointed, whence necessary for this one to have also something that he may offer. For if, indeed, he were upon the earth, he would not be a priest, there being the priests who are offering according to the law, the gifts, who unto an example and shadow do serve of the heavenly things, as Moses hath been divinely warned, being about to construct the tabernacle. For, see, saith he, thou mayest make all things according to the pattern that was shown to thee in the mount. And now he hath obtained a more excellent service. How much also of a better covenant is he mediator, which on better promises hath been sanctioned? For if that first were faultless, a place would not have been sought for a second.
And that is really encoded with Astro-Theology, right? Everybody knows that Mount Meru, Mount Ida, all these things are allegorizing that tree of life, whose golden fruit are the stars. And if you were to look at the stars and the way they move and how they all go around the pole, if you will, it forms like a mount. It's like a mountain. and everything, and the sun is constantly going up and down it throughout the year in its declination. That's how it appears to us. And so it's a great way to allegorize that. So when you see that, say that, makest all things according to the pattern that was shown to thee in the mount. Right? And a mountain and these high places are the best in the old world. But that's where you're going to get the best observations, because it's not as obfuscated by the phenomena, if you will, that's close to the horizon and all that stuff, close to the ground level.
And what's being said here is essential tenet of the priesthood, which is to adorn or craft things in the microcosm in correlation to what is in the macrocosm. That's the big deal, the big picture. Trying to fit the micro to the macro. Muted there.
As it is above, so it is below, as on the earth, so in the sky. The outward doth from the inward roll, and the inward dwells the inmost soul. That's it. That's Hermeticism, which, in case you didn't know, the root of that is Hermes. 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 And these, again, people will ascribe that to Mercury, just like they ascribe Mars to those planets that we now have, but that's not what those planets were called prior to the Common Era.
Yep, the savior mediator, Hermes. Hermes.
And so it's important for this because Moses, you're dealing with an epistle to those who have passed beyond the Hebraic degrees of masonry, which are priests. And that name, M-S-E, or Moshe, which that is Moses, is spelled Mem, Shin, which is M, Shin, S, or S-H, if you will. And then He, which is E. It's pronounced Moshe. And that was a term for an initiate in Egypt. And so that saved by the waters, saved from the waters, all that symbolism, it's basically encoding baptism and being born again into a new brotherhood. You know, this is even in like pretty much almost all secret societies, versions of them, whether it goes down to Cosa Nostra or anything else. You're being born again to a new brotherhood. And the slight variation for that term, you know, it's kind of like how some people argue about the Hebrew name for Jesus being Yeshua, but it's literally just I-S-U-A. You know, so like the word for salvation just looks like I-S-O or deliverance, I-S-E. They're just encoding it by slight, subtle changes. So then you have the word that's the origin for Messiah, which looks like M-S-I-H or Mashiach. And so in Exodus 39:22, the Lord commanded Moses, and he maketh the upper robe of the ephod work of a weaver completely of blue. And that's kind of like this, this apron type thing that the priests wore. And the reason that's important is because blue corresponds to the sky. And this name is important because we're now at a time where we pronounce the country Mexico like that. And they'll say in Mexico, they'll say Mexico. But when you look back in the old text, it was Mexico. And they said Messi. Our leader is Messi, M-E-S-I. And that is literally Moshe. And if you look up Messi or the Mexican correspondence to that Moses, it's Huitzilopochtli, something like that. It's spelled Huitzlopochtli nowadays. It's different in previous eras. They spelled it differently. If you want to pull that up, you'll see he's depicted in the blue, and he's just like Moses. And if you look at that description from that passage, we read earlier, the word for mediator in Greek, which signifies an arbitrator or a mediator, is from the word Greek mesos or mesites. Suppose that's all coincidence, right? Just like their word for divinity in God is theot, which has the root of tutates, tuisko, tot, what they call thoth, all of these things. It's all there.
King David.
Yep. And they can't explain it. So do you want to read that? What's interesting is this is my first, we're going through Robert Taylor's, this particular work of his that I hadn't read before. And so I hadn't gotten this Mexico gravy from him. I got it from other people before this was published. So he's since those works, he came out and published this. So I'm guessing he read some of those. And do you want to read that citation where he writes and kind of goes about it right after?
Yeah,
do it up.
Yeah, he wrote, "It will not be pretended, I hope, that the inhabitants of Mexico, who, before their invasion by the Spaniards, Pizarro and Cortez, had not heard of the existence of either Jew or Christian, could have borrowed their theology from our Hebrew Pentateuch. Yet it is their Mexi, or Messi, the founder of their race, the perfect counterpart of the Hebrew Moses, and their supreme God, the adorable Hitzliopachli, the facsimile of Jehovah." And this, it's a hard one.
It's tough.
I had to redo a lot of those when we were doing the audiobook for Terminalia. But one thing that is worth pointing out for people that might want to chase down this particular lead about Messi is Google search is not your friend. Modern academia is not your friend. There was a whole bunch of research and authentic investigation into these cultures at the time that contact was first made when the Europeans came over. And a lot of that has been buried or burned or destroyed. So your best bet is to do as Dylan does, and I like to do, going back to some of the first writers to talk about these things, is where you're going to find the references to things that are just not going to show up on your Wikipedia page or your Google search. And you're going to be confused by this with the modern interpretations and the way that the culture of those civilizations has been modified. Their own history has been washed, so most of the people in it don't even know.
Yep. And just to remind everybody, all the Masons who are involved with the actual planning and setting up of these temples, they had to be priests because they had to know the cosmos. They were the men from beyond, Hebrews, those who have passed over the Hebraic degrees of initiation in the Masonic priesthood. And so you needed to learn astrology and astronomy in order to build these temples based on these cycles. And in order to keep that astronomy precise, they created the astrology or Astro-Theology to remind them. That way you could take it with you and not ever have to worry about it being tapped into or acquired by other people, because you have to remember this is a guild. This is a profession. And if you lose that skill set, then other people can do it. And then there's no need for you, and the profession gets watered down and you don't have that lavish life luxury. And so Taylor added, and thus we have a blue curtain, the sky, hung upon 4 pillars, seasons, overlaid with gold, the light of the sun, and presenting the figures of cherubim of cunning work. And I say cherubim because that's how it's written. We say cherubim, which are cosmic cycles. And according to the pattern of things in the heavens, which are the asterisms and the layouts of the stars. He writes, and are we to be so stone blind? Are we so to renounce all faculties of reason which constitute our rational nature, as to oblige our preachers of the gospel by not discovering that this blue curtain with cherubim upon it was and could have been nothing else than an astronomical adoranion, or an orrery, or picture exhibiting the relation of the heavenly bodies precisely of the same nature as Walker's orrery, which you may see every year and anywhere where astronomical lectures are given, with the advantage of a suitable astronomical apparatus. You want to show the picture of an orrery? Oh, you got it.
I've been a step ahead of you every time. Got the pictures.
Sorry. So when you see me muted and like that delay, it's because I'm not on our screen where I can see us. So I just always like to remind you that. So it takes me a little bit. So do you want to take that next paragraph?
Yep. Just a second. Okay. And here we have the reasons and properties of that prevalence of the blue color and the color of the canopy of heaven, and scarlet and gold, the color of the planets and constellations, enwrought, embossed, and set upon that blue, not only in the veil of the Holy of Holies and in all the furniture of the tabernacle, but in the dresses of the priests who ministered in holy things and served unto the likeness of things in heaven. That is, the priests dressed themselves up in the imaginary characters of the constellations and planets, and one personated the planet Mercury, another Jupiter, another the sun or the moon, others the 12 signs of the zodiac, others the constellations without the zodiac, exhibiting in their dresses, by the golden spangles set upon a blue ground, the exact position of the stars in the constellations, which each in his particular function severally represented.
And what's so great about this is because when you start reading some of these stories, and Taylor, I think one of the reasons I didn't take a lot of notes on this, we didn't spend a lot of time on one particular chapter, is because a huge portion of it was him explaining how all these traveling groups go into the different places. They're basically a troupe of actors, and they're putting on these plays for people that are signifying the motions of the heaven, the tragedies, and all that stuff. And so, if you recall, the history's first actor they were called hypocrites or hypocrites, and they were the priests, and that was a function of their profession. And so now, Matthew 16 makes much more sense when you read it like that. Hypocrites, the face of the heavens indeed ye do know to discern, but the signs of the times ye are not able. And so most likely those who are able to determine the signs of the times are the ones not initiated into the upper echelons of that priesthood. And that's where you get things like the Gnostics or the Mysti, or as they were also called, the Illuminati, the Enlightened. And those people, that upper echelon of the priesthood, would be the ones who actually know all the little details that the people in the lower rungs don't know. Do you want to continue with reading out some of those notes? That next quote is fire. It could be a good clip.
Yep, let's do that. Yeah. Reverend Robert Taylor, he could not have articulated the following better. A book which represents God as a tyrant is a book only fit for slaves. A book which represents him as a liar is a lying book. A book which requires more explanation than it ever has yet had to explain away these representations had better be done away with, and done with forever. To which he added, and it would be so, sirs, it would be, but for the secret of it, that 'tis by this wicked craft, and by the very wickedness of it, that bishops, priests, and preachers have their wealth, and roll in saucy pomp over the crushed necks of the mentally degraded, and therefore politically oppressed people. Never will tyrants and oppressors be got rid of till Bibles be got rid of. And that says, mega biblion, mega kakon is the proverb. The great book is the great evil. Had the pretended revelation of God been worthy of a god? Oh, by the way, I was reading Greek. I can read the Greek alphabet. You guys can too. It's actually not that hard. Had the pretended revelation of God been worthy of a god, it would never have been done. Had its simple but holy purport been, all mankind are brethren, all are alike the children of one common nature. Let them make themselves happy. That is wisdom. Let them labor to promote the happiness of others. That alone is virtue. The tale would have been done too soon. There would have been nothing in it by which one man could overreach the understanding of another. There would have been no lies made to look like the truth, no injustice to be made to appear just, no impossibilities made to appear possible, no hell, no devil, no raw head and bloody bones that wouldn't stay dead when he was dead, no damnation, and so no clergy. I want to zoom in on one part of this too.
I love that last bit. No damnation and no clergy. This is from a clergyman.
Yeah. Just as Higgins says, no devil, no priests. It's a thing. But he says here, without this Bible, there would have been nothing in it by which one man could overreach the understanding of another. And that has a lot of implications, right? There's just the idea, the perception of authority, that you go to an authority for your interpretation or for your morality and things like that, when the truth is right and wrong, unless you've been damaged, is something intrinsically that it's in you. It's baked into the fabric of the universe, in my opinion. But then you have the special boy phenomenon, right? Where because somebody knows a little bit about a thing, they can't hear you say anything that goes against their interpretation or the belief of that. We both were on a podcast separately recently. We both ran into that a little bit, like particularly the example of me explaining how David was Teut or Thoth. The D and the T interchange. The V is a U, and you turn David, DVD, into TUT, Tut, Teut. I mean, it's right there. And in our second part, we're going to go through this system of how these different biblical patriarchs and heroes of the story are repeats of each other. That when you understand the core of the symbolism, the keys to it, you're actually reading the same story. And the Old Testament is, for the most part, the same story repeated in, different aesthetics over and over again. And that's a big part of it.
And there's something that I want you to harp on, because I'm the only one in the world that's done this, as far as I can tell, aside from people who touched around the subject, but this tomb may not have been discovered when people were dancing around this subject. And if you could show, let's first look, I put a screenshot of the Basque word for father. If you could show that, I just want to, before we show the picture of the Etruscan tomb, it says it's Aita. Right? And the reason I'm going to harp on this is because I don't know why I'm not getting some glory for this. Right? There is only me doing this. None of you special boys who talk about the Basque people and their O negative blood and all this other bullshit that doesn't really matter ever talk about the language of this word meaning father, priest, or author, which is a creator. Aita, A-I-T-A. Now, that's indisputable. You can look up any Basque lexicon. And this is where my work is, bar none, the most exceptional in the world, showing you this diffusion coming from Italy, not from the Orient, not from Atlantis, not from some other fantasy world. Now go to that Etruscan tomb picture. Now I'm going to start getting more aggressive because I really want to hammer this home. Etruscan is read from right to left, like Hebrew, like all the old languages. In fact, they had to walk back. What they thought was ancient Greek just turned out to be Etruscan. And that is the misunderstanding of cultural diffusion that's occurred. So you look at that, it's A-I-T-A, Aita, there, 4 centuries or more, possibly, depending on how, nobody can really date things accurately. Might only be a couple centuries, but whatever it is, that's older than the oldest Basque inscription in the historical record. So why are you using Etruscan words? If nobody knows where you're from and you're your own, alien race, how come you're using Etruscan words? And nobody ever addresses this when we have these discussions, and it's getting increasingly more frustrating, which is why I'm increasingly retreating from the public, because I've just realized I don't think there's a sincere, honest man among the majority of you. I think it's too hard to find a virtuous man who's not a coward and who doesn't have an agenda. And that's why I really only do this professionally with you, because you are a virtuous, honest man and your wife should be proud, and your future daughter should be proud.
Thanks, man. And it may go over the head a little bit for some people. Why does it matter that this Etruscan word eta or eti is the Basque word for father? And I want to just, because this is if you go look up eta, it's the same as Hades. It's the god of the underworld. And I'm going to do a lot to support your demonstration here in the second part of our podcast regarding this god of the underworld being the great father. So the great father is the one of the primary attributes of the deity, of the underworld god, of the Osiris figure, whoever it is. And that's why it matters. And that's why the priests call themselves the fathers. That's why it matters that this word is the same. And thank you. My wife just reminded me of a word that needs to be in both of our lexicons, because you talk about Dunning-Kruger effect a lot. People thinking that they know something because they have a little bit of knowledge, but it really is self-defeating, because then they can't hear somebody speaking that has more knowledge about a subject than them. And so there's a word, ultra-crepidarian. Ultra-crepidarian basically means somebody that suffers from the Dunning-Kruger effect, a word that was invented for that before there was such a description of the effect. Pretty important word, ultra-crepidarian. That's what you can call him, Dylan.
Oh, and we also need to give Gabe Slick Dissident some glory. We gave him the choice to name those 18th century burns. They're vertiginous burns, which cause vertigo, especially by being extremely high or steep. So when you talk about those 18th century burns, try to remember to call them vertiginous burns.
Vertiginous burns. Good stuff, man. Anything you want to put in before we do our break to the second part?
No, come on over if you're seeing this on YouTube or somewhere else, or the free portion on my Substack. You want to become a paid member to access the rest of this at my Substack, which is greattide.substack.com, or at Chance's Interverse, if you want to give that address.
Yep, the patreon.com/Interverse, or you can become a channel member through the YouTube channel membership situation. There'll be links everywhere. It should be, if you are motivated to find it, you definitely will. And then the next part, we're going to, at least what I'm going to talk about, because we haven't even dug into my notes yet. I'm going to help everybody understand the arithmetic of the genealogy and the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, and the world age doctrine, and how all that pertains to the ruling class, why that matters to our current societal predicament, and how we got to that predicament. So lots more to cover. It's a big one. Strap in, folks. Thanks for being here on the free side and entertaining the possibility of supporting us. I think that it's well worth it. And we appreciate the members who already are doing that. We put a lot into this for you guys. Looking forward to the other side where we can really dig in.